So I guess it's Netflix world and I'm just living and reviewing it. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Selene. I generally cover pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. Netflix has provided me with a lot of good reality shows to review lately, and today is no different. I wanted to talk about a new Netflix reality show called Cooking with Paris. So I don't have too much of a structure for this video. I just sort of wanted to give my thoughts on this show because there was a lot about it that was like typical lighthearted, stupid reality show I watch in the background and some really artsy elements to it. So I found it a bit refreshing. And when I was looking into this show, I saw that the reviews were missing the point a lot of the time. It felt like almost every article I came across was taking the show very much at face value. I found this show kind of interesting. And not in like it's the deepest thing since Shakespeare, but it's interestingly created. So let me just get into it. Let me just give a little background on this show. It's called Cooking with Paris, and it is a 6-episode Netflix series that's reality TV. It follows Paris Hilton attempting to cook in her kitchen, and every episode she invites a guest over to help her cook the meal and then eat it. The episode will usually have like a decoration theme surrounding whatever type of food they're eating. They're 20-something minute episodes. They're shorter episodes. Paris Hilton rose to fame in the 2000s and is often credited as being the original influencer. She invented the selfie and was just famous for being famous, basically. She was just like the Regina George of the nightlife scene in Hollywood. This reality show on Netflix is based on a YouTube series of videos she did. It was just a couple of videos she did called also Cooking with Paris, where she made this sort of absurd cooking videos in her kitchen of her making lasagna and jello shots and sort of giving tongue-in-cheek tutorials for how to make them. They're like funny. It's comedy. Paris Hilton generally in the public eye plays a bimbo, dumb, blonde character. I think the dumb blonde stereotype of the 2000s, think like Legally Blonde and White Chicks. That era of the dumb blonde I feel like was influenced a lot by Paris Hilton. I mean, the White Chicks was literally based on Paris Hilton for real, but the whole dumb blonde stereotype is essential to the Paris Hilton persona. However, a couple of years ago, I think in 2019, maybe it was 2020, Paris Hilton released a documentary on YouTube called This Is Paris. It is free to watch on YouTube if you want to check it out, but this was sort of the world's first raw and vulnerable look at Paris Hilton and the persona that it was. A lot of people assumed it was pretty real. I mean, she doesn't really break character, and it's just the persona people have known from her for all these years. But in this documentary, we got to see who she is behind the persona, sort of some traumatizing experiences she's had, how her life has played out, how she planned her brand to be more financially independent from her parents. So she really created this persona to make a brand that would be lucrative for her, and she's pretty open about saying that. Her voice isn't quite so ditzy. She is not actually dumb at all. She's pretty smart. All of her close friends and family describe her as very smart. It's clearly a character. The Paris Hilton we know, the one that says, "That's hot," and "Beyond," and "Sliving," which her companies and stuff are called Sliving. It's like living with an S in front, and she's really trying to make fetch happen with this word, and I don't think it's catching on very much. I feel bad because she seems really into that word, but it's like a mix of slang and living. To me, it's a very fetch moment. This documentary revealed to the world that her persona was a persona. It wasn't real, it's a character that she plays. So in Cooking with Paris, she is back fully in the persona of the dumb blonde that doesn't know what tongs are or what a whisk is, and you know, everything. She's like, what's that? Or how do you do that? Just things like that where, you know, it's not fully true, but a lot of the critics really take that as like, oh my god, she's so dumb. She doesn't know what a whisk is. Can you believe it? Maybe this is an act. I did find one article, I think it was the Time article. I'll link it below. It was clearly someone familiar with, I think, Paris Hilton's history and the documentary. So there were some articles that were in on the joke, but I feel like a lot of the reviews I saw missed the point that it is comedy. Comedy of seeing extravagance, like, and super wealthy people fumble around a kitchen because it's funny. In general, I think critics take lighthearted media too seriously and end up giving it bad reviews because it's lighthearted or comedic, but in this case, I think it was very intentional how the show was created in the Paris Hilton persona to just be a comedic, fun time and not something that is real reality. It's not trying to be raw documentary style the way her documentary actually was. It's like reality. Reality TV, we're told, is real, but that's a whole other can of worms. A lot of the times it's not. So I found it interesting how they shot and edited and stylized this series. I think they actually did a very artistic job with this part, and it was my favorite part of how the show was made. So for example, every episode begins with a very glamorized shot of Paris Hilton in a grocery store, sort of like full wind machine and fancy lighting. The shot begins with glamorous Paris Hilton in a grocery store, very cinematic. After a few seconds in that, they cut to the real Paris Hilton in the real grocery store. So it's like she's just in a grocery store in a fancy dress, very just like documentary style. The way they sort of juxtapose that, it's fun to see sort of like how they can movie magic their way into making a grocery store glamorous and then immediately saying the payoff of how it looks without all the filter and the glam. It's a very interesting technique, and I thought it was very artistic. The way they did the glamorized parts was very beautifully done, and then seeing that contrast is very, very fun. It's almost like the glamorous thing is what Paris Hilton sees in her head, and then the reality is just like real life and how real life sees Paris Hilton. And the whole show is stylized, and I think it's a commentary a bit on the domestication of women and just sort of fighting that stereotype. So hear me out. Maybe I'm getting too like, this is my thesis project. The music, the fonts, and the way they stylized the glamour shots, or like the title of sections of the episode, are very like 1950s sitcom domestic woman stories. Like, y'all, I went through such a journey trying to find what this is called, like what this genre or aesthetic is called, and I could not find it for the life of me. It's like, think like the first and second episodes of WandaVision, or like, those are based on like I Love Lucy and Bewitched, shows about domesticated 50s housewives type thing. So the type of music you would hear in that sitcom, or fonts you might see, or types of shots in the kitchen you might see, are replicated in Cooking with Paris. That 1950s sort of aesthetic and style are juxtaposed with modern elements of Paris not knowing how to cook, not cooking in any standard way, and they do add modern elements. So sometimes the music will switch to like an EDM type sound rather than the 1950s type glamorous music. Yeah, for once I felt young on the internet trying to research this aesthetic and genre. So if you know, please comment below what I'm talking about. But it's like that post World War II domesticated lady. I think the music is called like Easy Listening. I was really trying hard to research what time period this was inspired by, but I couldn't figure it out. I think it's just like the 50s to the 80s in general in the United States, and the domestic housewife aesthetic is what this show stylizes itself as, but with modern elements like some EDM and just Paris in general being a very modern woman. I mean, she's also rich, so I mean, the elephant in the room is that I'm sure she doesn't cook for herself most of the time. She doesn't need to, and she can afford not to. I just feel like some people miss that point and don't look into it this hard, which I don't blame anyone. This is not the show for everybody. I can see to a lot of people how the show looks very dumb and stupid if you just take it at surface level. But I do think it's showing sort of that contrast of like domestic housewife 1950s aesthetics with the modern woman, represented by Paris Hilton. Oh my god, I'm going too into this, like, it's just a show, but I just found that interesting, and I was hoping I would find an article that would talk about this juxtaposition of styles or concepts so that I could get a name for what it was. And everyone was just like, oh, this show is stupid. Rich people trying to cook is so dumb. No one can give me the information. But yeah, am I reading just too far into it? Is it just a dumb show? I just think they really stylized it. It's not just like a low budget basic reality show. It's like they have beautiful setups, beautiful decor for the theme nights. So in my research, I found one song. While I was watching the show, I was trying to figure out how am I gonna categorize what music this is. Because I don't know time periods. I'm not a good historian. Maybe I should go to graduate school for this stuff, but I'm not very good at like American studies or knowing historical pop culture as much as I'd like to. I was like, okay, what kind of music is this? Sounds jazzy, but chill. I don't know. I recognized one of the songs that played in the show. I was like, this song triggered my fight or flight. I Shazammed it. It's like an instrumental that I've heard somewhere else. I didn't remember from where. I look it up, and it's the theme song from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is a sitcom-y show about some people that own a bar. I'm not familiar with the show. I know a lot of people love it. I lived with someone who just would binge it all day at an extremely loud volume, and I could just hear every new episode starting because I would hear this tune. And guess what? When I researched this tune, I learned it's public domain. Here it is. So that's the song I'm talking about, and that's the style that this whole show is in, if you can imagine the aesthetics that go with that music. And apparently It's Always Sunny actually didn't have much budget to spend on their theme music, so they just used something that was public domain. So let me go through and talk about some of the guests we saw in Cooking with Paris. So they're all like celebrity or influencer guests that she brought in. The first episode, she brought in Kim Kardashian as her guest. If you don't know, Paris Hilton like made Kim Kardashian, and it was nice. I was rewatching This Is Paris, the documentary, and it was nice to see Kim there acknowledging that she would be nowhere without Paris, because Paris really put her on the map, pioneering reality TV at the time, inspired Keeping Up with the Kardashians. So Kim Kardashian was their first guest, which felt fitting, and she seemed fairly at home in the kitchen, like more than Paris at least. I feel like I hadn't heard Kim talk in a while, and just seeing her like in the kitchen and talking to Paris about cooking and sort of telling her how to do stuff, she sounds just like Chris. And I knew she sounded like Chris before, but shit, like Kim has morphed into Chris almost. So in this Kim Kardashian episode, they're making like breakfast. They make frittata, which looked really good actually. This was a tough show to watch hungry, I will admit. Like I was getting hungry every time. Even though Paris will put like edible glitter on literally everything. Paris and Kim talk a lot about kids and having kids. I mean, Kim has 4 kids, and Paris says like, oh, Kim has to feed 4 kids in the morning, so she's the perfect person to help me cook. When like Kim isn't the one feeding her 4 children, please. Like, she has 5 assistants and chefs to do that for them. They talk a lot about motherhood, and Paris says she wants to be a mom soon. I couldn't tell if this was shade, but Kim was like, oh, I know you don't want to hear this, but I hear your 40s are the best years of your life. Paris is just like, bitch, shut up. She doesn't say that, but I think Paris is either 39 or 40 at this point. Throughout the series, even though it's pretty playful and under her Paris Hilton persona, she has some real moments still, and it feels like she is trying to grow out of this brand a bit. And she seems to really want to, but it seems like it's too lucrative to leave behind. And that's something she says in the documentary more. She expresses multiple times throughout Cooking with Paris that she wants to have children. Later on in another episode with Lele Pons, which I was like, Lele Pons, that's so random. She's a YouTuber. She mentions to her that she wants to have twins, one boy and one girl, and says that with IVF you can order that. And she wants to name the girl London, which is funny because London Tipton on Sweet Life of Zack and Cody was modeled after Paris Hilton, and she wants to name the boy after some other city that she has not decided on. In the Kim Kardashian episode, we also see how her event planners and house managers and assistants are the ones responsible for making the set and the dining room where they have their meal. Basically, her dining room gets transformed every single episode depending on the theme of the food. In the Kim Kardashian episode, they were making breakfast and she wanted the room to look like clouds, inspired by Lucky Charms. This was the most abstract concept, but it was all like sky and clouds. She had like a Mexican themed episode where she recreated Tulum. Oh my god, the Mexican episode was a whole thing. And then Italy for one of them. She did a retro diner for another. So the dining room gets completely transformed, and that's not her doing. It's obviously the show's production and her event managers and whoever. She has a whole staff. I wanted to hear more from them. We saw most of them in the Kim Kardashian episode and didn't see much. We saw a bit of her chief of staff, which I'm like, chief of staff? Like, I didn't know regular people had chiefs of staff, but here we are. Her name is Charlotte and she's around. What kind of life it must be to be Paris Hilton's chief of staff? See, I want a documentary on that person. So another episode was the Mexican one I was talking about, and that was episode 2 with Saweetie. Saweetie looked really great. She made really great shrimp tacos. This was like the only guest that like was showing Paris her own kind of recipe, and she talked about how she came up poor. And that made me feel like, okay, she knows how to cook, and she mentioned that she knows how to cook. Like, I feel like poor people, you know, you have to learn because you can't just be eating out all the time. I trust Saweetie's tacos were really good. That dish was the one I would most like to try. It looked so freaking good. They did have this big mistake where they put like the cap of a salt shaker in the blender when they were making salsa. They found the thing in one piece, so I don't think it poisoned anything, but it was just like one of those dumb moments. Also, props to Saweetie cooking with like nails like this long. Like, she was going at it like no problem. Even Paris commented on it. She's like, oh no, these nails make things easier. Like, that was badass. They also all dress really glamorous, so it's like a whole thing that Paris dresses extremely glamorous, and that's part of the camp of the show, and I think that's the part that critics don't like. I feel like critics and camp are just like mortal enemies and they hate it. So Paris brings the camp with her outfits in this show, and every single time her guest is super glamorous and she is glamorous. She had this fringe jacket that was amazing, huge fringes that was just getting in all the food. It was just like, it's camp. There's no other word to describe it. I like camp. It's not for everybody, but the part of the show that makes it not just plain stupid, but like intentionally stupid, and that to me is cool. A lot of shows, like for example, The Bachelor is a very mainstream reality show about romance, and it takes itself very seriously. A lot of the fan base of The Bachelor, they sort of hate watch it, or, you know, the way I watch Love is Blind or these Netflix shows that I criticize, that I enjoy watching them, but I enjoy criticizing them because they're dumb. Those shows are usually dumb because they're trying to sell the audience a very big fantasy as reality. So The Bachelor, for example, takes itself so seriously in that, like, they don't poke fun at themselves too much. They pretend like this is really, they're trying to find love and marriage and who's here for the right reasons, and when it's like, we all know everyone's there to get famous and get Instagram brand deals. Like, we know the fantasy is not real and people just like to pretend it is a bit. To me, that's the difference between those types of shows and Cooking with Paris. Cooking with Paris is stupid, but it's intentionally creating that stupidity. It's not stupid because it takes itself so serious. It's stupid because it doesn't take itself serious. This sounds like nonsense, but I hope it makes sense to somebody because it's camp and it's on purpose that she's dumb. It's not that she's just a dumb rich person, which she is a rich person, so I don't think she cooks much. I'm not trying to say she's an expert cook and pretending not to be. I think she's just like, she's playing the character, and the critics just don't realize that. They probably didn't watch the YouTube documentary, did they? So let me just talk about another guest that was there, and that was Demi Lovato. I feel like Demi Lovato was the most famous person that Paris Hilton got to be her guest, aside from, I guess, Kim Kardashian. It seems pretty recent. They talk about COVID in general as like a thing that's present, so I imagine this is filmed recently enough. I thought Paris got the most real with Demi. With each guest, Paris talked about sort of how her and the guest met and how she feels about them or whatever, like what she admires about them. Every guest had sort of a different rapport with Paris. For Demi, Paris kept repeating that Paris really admires how bold and outspoken Demi is. Paris, it felt like, let the persona down a little bit with Demi. I think she was trying to sort of match the realness that she admires out of Demi, if that makes sense. However, with Demi Lovato, they made Italian food, which it was the food that went the most awry, I think, in general. They tried to make ravioli, like the pasta part of ravioli, from scratch, and it failed. So they had to use store-bought ravioli, which was good that Paris had the backup. She mentioned as her tip to always have a backup. And they also made cannolis that were very, like, full of glitter. Like, Paris overdid it, and for me to say someone overdid the glitter and the pinks and all that, it has to be really intense. So they were eating these cannolis that were all covered in glitter, and they would take a bite, like, and a cloud of glitter would just rise from the bite. So that was too much. I think that food was the worst of all of the episodes, unfortunately for Demi. That glitter still is haunting me, seeing it just like and Demi was literally like, this is interesting. And the final guests that Paris had were her mom and sister, and it was definitely interesting to see them. It felt like there was a little more pressure, and honestly, Paris Hilton's mom reminds me of what's-her-face from Schitt's Creek, Moira. She's like the real-life Moira a little bit. She's obviously not as dramatic and intense as Moira because that's a fictional character, but she gave me a little bit of Moira vibes. And Nikki Hilton, who is Paris's sister, she always gives me like wasp mom vibes. There's this girl on TikTok that makes these parodies of like a wasp mom, which is just like a rich white lady character, basically.
Yes, I understand it is busy, Todd, but I'm a mother. It is Mother's Day, and we should be able to have the meal that we want to have. Okay, where's the goddamn... Hi!
And Nikki Hilton is like the real life version of this woman. Again, not as dramatized in the tone, but like similar. Their family just seems very like bougie rich people. And after hearing a lot of what Paris went through in her documentary, This Is Paris, growing up, she was sent away to a lot of these very intense boot camps to reform her, and it ended up being very abusive there. So it's kind of weird that the mom and the sister were there just playing with the Paris character, but I don't know. Those were the last guests of the season. I don't know if there's more seasons coming or what the plan is for this show, but I found it like a nice lighthearted watch. It's obviously silly and dumb, but it's campy. If you enjoy campy TV or just like light reality TV, it's a fun watch. The food isn't stellar and the instructions aren't great, but it looks really good. It's definitely a different style, a bit of a refreshing style for reality TV, I would say. Very cool cinematography and those glamour shots they do. I really like that type of stuff and that type of stylizing of reality. It's that glamorizing your life kind of concept that has become pretty popular on TikTok. Those are my thoughts on Cooking with Paris. Please let me know in the comments below what you thought of Cooking with Paris or what you think in general of Paris Hilton. If you haven't watched, please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos twice a week about pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Twitter or Instagram to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.